Hello and welcome to our viewers from all over the world. This is Lunchtime Politics on Channels Television, and we're reaching you live from our global headquarters here in Lagos. I am Bukola Koka. The top stories. ECOWAS schedules another extraordinary meeting to deliberate on Niger coup. Ministerial nominee Festus Keyamo offers unreserved apology to Senate over some of his actions as minister under President Muhammadu Buhari. Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki opens up on spat with Deputy Philip Shaibu. Thank you for staying tuned, and we begin from the federal capital, where reports say another extraordinary summit of ECOWAS heads of state and government on the political situation in the Republic of Niger is scheduled to hold on Thursday in Abuja. At the meeting, the ECOWAS leaders are expected to officially respond to the military leaders' decision to ignore the deadline to reinstate the democratically elected President Mohamed Bazoum. Meanwhile, the president last night met with 5 northern governors who share border with Niger Republic at the State House in Abuja as part of consultations by the president on the situation. Although details of the meeting were not made public, the meeting comes as ECOWAS and other member states have imposed a border closure on Niger. The governors at the meeting were Ahmed Aliyu of Sokoto, Umar Namadi of Jigawa, Mai Malabuni of Yobe, Idris Nasser of Kebbi, and his Katsina State counterpart, Dr. Diko Rada. And from the State House to the National Assembly, where a mild drama unfolded during the screening of the last ministerial nominee, Mr. Festus Keyamo. The Senate, however, confirmed 45 out of 48 nominees sent to the upper chamber by the president. The 3 nominees not confirmed are former Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai, Mrs. Stella Okutete from Delta State, and Abubakar Danladi from Taraba State. According to Senate President Godwin Obaseki, the nominees were not confirmed because they're still undergoing security checks.
Out of the mouth of 2 or 3.
For 6 non-consecutive days, we have watched ministerial nominees mount this lectern and present themselves to be screened by the Senate. We saw nominees take a bow and exit the stage. Some called to task over discrepancies in academic qualifications and controversial comments and tweets. A nominee overcome with emotions mid-presentation and the nomination withdrawn. But we never saw the Senate go into a rowdy session during the screening exercise until Monday, when the former Minister of State for Labor, Mr. Festus Keyamo, was before the upper chamber. Mr. Keyamo is the last of 48 nominees to be screened and confidently informs the Senate how he had spent the last 30 years using the instrumentality of the law to advance the cause of democracy and strengthen the powers of the Senate.
I felt that if I looked at all the provisions of the law, and I felt the military had to bow to this Senate, had to subject itself to the authority of the Senate. And so on my own, I wrote then to the Senate President, Senator David Mark, I wrote to the then Attorney General Andwaka, I wrote to all of them that, look, this procedure is not right. The military must come here for confirmation before they assume, their duties.
My order is anchored on Section 88 of the Constitution.
Trouble begins for Mr. Keyamo when the Deputy Minority Leader, Senator Darlington Nwokocha, draws the attention of the Senate to events in 2020 when Mr. Keyamo held sway as the Minister of State for Labor as regards the 52 billion naira public works program. Senator Nwokocha recalls how Mr. Keyamo at the time denied lawmakers the opportunity to oversight the program.
What we are talking about is a 52 billion naira appropriation, and the right of appropriation resides on the legislature. That is our right. And I know quite well that the right of oversight resides on us because we have to hold you accountable for whatever thing we appropriate to you. It is our right. And when he was invited, he expressly told us, to the public, that we want to hijack his role, that we want to blackmail us, that we are corrupt, that we want to hijack his role.
Senator Ainaya Abaribe quickly seconds the motion that Mr. Keyamo's ministerial screening be suspended.
Both the House of Representatives and the Senate, that I do support that this nominee should be stepped down pending when he decides that the National Assembly has that right to inquire into the workings of a minister and his ministry. I so second.
At this point, Mr. Keyamo's screening effectively divides the Senate, with some senators calling for a division.
Distinguished senator, take your seats, please.
The Senate Majority Leader calls for an executive session in an attempt to bring order to proceedings.
Mr. President, and very, very distinguished senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, may I at this time move that we dissolve into an executive session to be able to iron out some issues.
Nearly 2 hours later, the session ends. A sober-looking Keyamo is once again on the stage.
The apology is without reservation at all. I apologize. There are only two things I just need to say before I go, because we are before the world. One or two things. One is that regarding that program, because when Nigerians hear a figure, their ears go up. Hey, what big figure has been mentioned? No. Regarding that program, every single payment, and I insisted to the past president that it must come from the central bank directly to the accounts of the people who were nominated to receive those funds. And like I said, I'm sorry for that misunderstanding.
A federal lawmaker makes a case for Mr. Keyamo.
Now that he's apologized before the National Assembly, including myself, because I also have a question that I should ask. But now that I apologize, I want to appeal to the General House and the Senate under the leadership of Mr. Chairman, who the Senate President, that I am moving a motion for him to take the leave of the Senate and to go and not to sin again. Take a leave and go, and don't repeat such again now that you have apologized before this honour house.
Those who are in support of this motion say aye. Aye. Those who are against say nay. The ayes have it. The apologies are hereby accepted.
The Senate accepts his apology and he is asked to exit the podium.
Will the Senate approve the nomination of
The Senate proceeds to confirm the ministerial nominees.
Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
The upper chamber confirms a total of 45 nominees. 3 of the nominees, namely former Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai, Mrs. Stella Okotete from Delta, and Abubakar Danladi from Taraba State, are not confirmed because they are still undergoing security checks.
And staying with the upper chamber, the Senate President, Godwin Obaseki, has announced the names of standing committees chairmen in the upper chamber. Senator Obaseki made the announcement of 36 senators shortly after its votes and proceedings. Some of those who made the list of the major committees named are Senator Godiya Akwashiki, who will chair the Air Force Committee, Buhari Abdul Fatai, Aviation, Osita Izunaso, Capital Market, Cyril Fashui, Establishment Committee, Aminu Tambuwa, Housing Committee, Senator Adams Oshomole, Interior, Hamad Lawan, Defense, and Victor Omer to chair the Diaspora Committee, among others. The Senate has, however, adjourned plenary till September the 26th for its long vacation. And to other stories now, the leadership of the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, says the contempt summon issued by the federal government against the Labour Union has been withdrawn. NLC President Mr. Joe Ajaero explains that Senate has called for a meeting with the union on Tuesday to iron out their issues. Mr. Ajaero was a guest on our political program, Politics Today.
The Senate promised to get back to us and resolve the matter within 1 week. Just this evening, we got a notice from them inviting us for a meeting tomorrow. On other issues, we are yet to get the modality on the restructured negotiating team, especially the government team, who has it and those that will lead the government team. That one is still pending. However, rising from our next meeting, we decided to take further action on the vexatious position of the Industrial Court and the Ministerial of Justice to the Solicitor General that they are sending us letters about contempt. And then the neck of the NLC rose up, giving up to 14th of August for them to withdraw such a summon for contempt or face industrial action, real industrial action. But equally this afternoon, the Minister of Justice through the Solicitor General of the Federation sent a letter to us withdrawing that charge.
Well, we'll have more on that later. In the meantime, the Cross River State Governor, Bassey Otu, has appealed to members of the Nigerian Medical Association, NMA, Cross River State Chapter, to return to work as the state continues to do all it can to ensure the release of their kidnapped colleague, Professor Kanem Philip Ephraim, who has been in captivity for over 25 days. The governor made the appeal at the Dan Achibong Lodge while receiving members of the association after a peaceful demonstration, stating that while the state government is intensifying efforts to ensure the safe release of the kidnapped doctor, the body should return to work and carry out their primary responsibility, which is to save lives, as two wrongs cannot make a right. The governor also gave the assurance that his administration was working closely with the various security agencies to drastically curb, if not totally eradicate, kidnapping in the state. The governor further applauded the contributions and sacrifices of doctors in the state, remarking that his administration will not be defeated by the challenges of those involved in nefarious activities. And this is Lunchtime Politics on Channels Television. Well, it was a busy Monday in the federal capital, and all of those issues will be coming together as we have a guest joining us to look at them. So stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Politics in Edo State now, where the governor, Godwin Obaseki, has opened up on his rift with his deputy, Mr. Philip Shaibu, whom he says has perfected plans to leave the ruling People's Democratic Party to pursue his ambition of becoming the next governor of the state. Governor Obaseki explained that he has no impeachment plans in mind, even as Mr. Shaibu had gone to court to restrain him from doing so. The governor, who was speaking when he received a PDP delegation from Edo North, maintains that the court case is part of Mr. Shaibu's plans to defect to another party and remain in office as the deputy governor of Edo State.
Let me put it very clearly on record that I am not aware of any plots or any scheme to impeach the Deputy Governor, Right Honorable Philip Shaibu. I have also checked, and there is no such plan, or there was no such plan. I must state here that Comrade Philip Shaibu has never had the courtesy to discuss his ambition with me. What I hear is that he is consulting. Because the last time we spoke about my succession after the last House of Assembly elections, I did say that we should all be patient and that our task today is to try and finish well, to conclude all the projects we have started, and to unify and consolidate our party. Because it's only when we do these two things right would we have the support from our people to produce my successor. I made it very clear. And like you have pointed out, there's no timetable yet for the Edo elections. It will come later the year. So I believe that this action by him is just a preemptive move to get a court order, keep his position while he now moves to the other party to get a ticket.
Well, Professor Samuel Isaiahika, Professor of Political and Socioeconomic Department of Political Science, Imo State University, joins me now on Lunchtime Politics to look at some of the major happenings in the federal capital on Tuesday. Professor Isaiahika, thank you for joining us on Lunchtime Politics. Professor, please unmute. You may be muted. Please unmute so we can hear you. Professor Samuel, can you hear me? Well, we may have to get back to Professor Isaiahika when we sort out the audio issues through to him. To other stories now. Ahead of the November governorship election in Imo State, religious, traditional, and political leaders across party lines from Imo North Senatorial District, popularly called Okigwe Zone, have reaffirmed their support for the re-election bid of the incumbent governor of Imo State, Senator Hope Uzodimma, for what they describe as his giant strides and phenomenal achievements in the zone and across the state in the last 3.5 years in office. The leaders commend the governor for his policies and programs in the aspect of workers' welfare, infrastructure, and security. Well, again, we return to Cross River State, where Governor Obaseki has appealed to members of the Nigerian Medical Association to return to work as the state continues to do all it can to ensure the release of their kidnapped colleague, Professor Ekanem Philip Ephraim, who has been in captivity for over 25 days. The governor made the appeal at the Dan Achibong Lodge while receiving members of the association after a peaceful demonstration, stating that while the state government is intensifying efforts to ensure the safe release of the kidnapped doctor, the body should return to work and carry out their primary responsibility, which is to save lives, as true wrongs cannot make a right. The governor also gave the assurance that his administration was working closely with the various security agencies to drastically curb and, if not totally, eradicate kidnapping in the state. The governor further applauded the contributions and sacrifices of doctors in the state, remarking that his administration will not be defeated by the challenges of those involved in nefarious activities.
The journey of 1,000 miles begins one day. Not too long. We will clear our society of all miscreants. We are discussing both at the federal level. The president is aware of this case. The IG is aware of this case. Special squads have been sent in here. We are doing all that we can to bring her. I want you to believe us that just like you carry the pain, we are also very pained. But we are pained also in that two wrongs will never make a right. It is not true that the fatalities, the mobilities that are going on are silent. They are not silent. Families are crying. A lot of things are happening in our hospitals, which goes to the extent that very soon we'll be handling too many issues at the same time. I want to plead that while we still continue to work tough and hard, please, let doctors do the best that they can to save life. After all, your main call is to save life. And I know, and I believe, and in all our prayers, we know that we will continue to do our very best to make sure that we bring her back safely alive.
Governor of Cross River State there, Senator Basio too. And now we return to our review of major happenings in the Federal Capital Territory yesterday, as we have joining us Professor Samuel Isaiahika, Professor of Political and Socio-Economic Department of Political Science in Igbo State. Professor Isaiahika, thank you for joining us. I hope you can hear me now.
I think so. I can hear you. I hope I'm hearing you. I hope you're hearing me too.
Event finally, loud and clear. Loud and clear.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start by getting your immediate thoughts on the rowdy session, the drama, the suspension of the screening of nominee Mr. Festus Keyamo, and the eventual conclusion. What are your thoughts?
Well, what happened to him initially can be construed as what you expect in a nascent democracy, where development of ideas and personalities play a very fundamental role. It isn't anything really unique. Every person who is appearing before the National Assembly, particularly Senate, the upper house, is supposed to be screened, and that screening is supposed to reflect both the past, the present, and possibly what the person is likely going to do in the future. So I want to believe, in my own view, that the screening and the shock-off he went through are things that I expected in a nascent and growing dynamic democracy.
And by the way, what role did the Senate President's visit to the villa just after the suspension of the screening yesterday, what role did he play in the conclusion of the process?
Yeah, one can only guess what role he played because I wasn't in the villa with him. But the truth is that Senator Godwin Obaseki did what a leader is supposed to do. He confronted with that situation where there were reactions from Alaribe and Wokocha in the Senate. It is appropriate for him to consult his principal. Yes, he is the president of Senate, but he is the president of Senate where President Bola Tinubu is the president. So it is appropriate that a nominee by the president who had specific difficulties and in whom the president has, expressed the desire to make a member of his committee or his cabinet should be cleared, but after consultation. So it is not inappropriate. It is not something strange that the president of Senate went to see the president so they can iron out the differences and problems arising from the screening of one of his nominees. So it's logical.
All right, even though the Senate has explained that the two events are unrelated, but let's manage our time and move to other issues. Labour and the federal government. We heard the NLC president announce yesterday that the federal government has withdrawn that contempt suit against its action, its mass protests that we saw last week. What do you think informed federal government's decision to withdraw that contempt suit against Labour?
My view is that the federal government realized that this is not war, and then threatening the Labour at this particular critical time when the government is still trying to find its feet would be a smart political move. Besides, the Labour was going to paralyze the country if they went on strike. They were going to paralyze the country politically, economically, and socioculturally. At this stage in the evolution of the present government, it will be traumatizing. The impact will be multifarious and multidimensional. Therefore, the appropriate thing to do the appropriate thing to do was the suggestion or the advice given to the president by his team. You call in and stop this action that where the federal government is planning, and then remove the case from court, and then follow dialogue, adopt diplomacy that will yield a better dividend at the end of the day.
But how much of altruism is involved in, can we see in that decision? Is it altruism, or rather the worry of being seen as insensitive too early in the life of this administration?
You see, it is important to note that the essence of governance is to deliver services to the largest majority of people. And if there's going to be any action or activity that is going to obstruct that particular central goal of government, providing for the welfare and needs of the largest majority, then government is mandated, government is obliged, is obligated to try and adopt diplomatic strategies which will enable it attain the same goal without obstructing or without rocking the boat. Now, if government had persisted and turned and raised a case against Labour by going to court, Labour was going to go on a rally, you know, and probably a protest. Strike will have been usually is the last step, the last hurdle when this kind of situation arises. So to avoid such a situation, because any one of these situations will create a lull in the economy. And if at this stage where the people of Nigeria are extensively under stress, they are going to easily snap. You know, when somebody is feeling depressed, there is a tendency of aggression, a reaction of aggression, and that will lead to crisis. And crisis at this stage of government, and at any stage of government anyway, should be avoided.
Professor Isaiahika, we must drop the anchor at that point. Nigerians are under stress. Those are the operative words, and we hope that Labour and the federal government would reach some form of agreement. We want to thank you very much for your time on Lunchtime Politics today. Professor Isaiahika is a professor of political and socioeconomy, Department of Political Science, Imo State University. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, too.
And you have been served on Lunchtime Politics today. Thank you so much for being there. Join us again, same time tomorrow for another edition. I am Bukola Koka. Bye for now.